Hi, my name is James Nielsen. This is for FTH223, my week 4 assignment, and today's date is May 17th, 2025. Now, let me go ahead and start off by saying that there's no live ammunition present in my workbench or in my work area. And with that said, we can go ahead and get started. Part 1 of this assignment is going to be compensator science. For demonstration purposes, I have my PSA dagger. As you can see here, no magazine inserted. No round in the chamber. This firearm is clear and safe. Now, as you can see, it does have a single port compensator installed on the front of this. The science of it is, as the gas escapes the barrel, it's just going to go forward and kind of spread out, which forces the gun to kind of come upward. And what the compensator does is, as the projectile exits, that those gases are forced up out of this port, which when the gun fires, the gases will come out and it'll prevent the muzzle rise. And basically it's mitigating recoil, and also having that extra little bit of weight on the front is also going to help mitigate the recoil. Some pros are it's going to help you shoot flatter, so you can be able to stay on target, get faster follow-up shots. Some cons are going to be it makes the gun longer. So as you can see here, I have my dagger compact here. There's no magazine in the magwell and no round in the chamber. Firearm is clear and safe. And you can see these two guns have the same slide length, but as you can tell with that compensator on there, it makes quite a big difference in size. So if you're looking to, for a gun that you want to conceal carry or anything like that, but you think you're going to end up going ahead and throwing a comp on and all that, you got to take into consideration how much bigger that makes the gun. All right, so we're going to move on to part 2. For part 2, I'm going to go ahead and get some trigger pull measurements on our SAR B6 here. I'm going to go ahead and show clear. As you can see, there's no magazine in the magazine well and no ammunition in the chamber. This firearm is clear and safe. And I'm going to get set up in our vise here, go ahead and get some trigger pull measurements, and I'll get back with you when I have the results. All right, so I went ahead and got some trigger pull measurements here. Our double action averaging around 9 pounds, which isn't great. It's not terrible. And for our single action, we're averaging around 3 pounds, which the single action on this actually feels pretty nice. I went ahead and the next step was to assess the feel of the trigger. I've been playing with this gun a lot since I got it. And the single action is a really nice, just short, crisp, clean break at 3 pounds. That's a pretty nice trigger. The double action is a pretty heavy pull. I feel like for being 9 pounds, it even feels a little bit heavier than that. It's not really gritty. It's pretty smooth overall, but once you hit the wall, it just has a really hard pull right before it finally breaks. But overall, not too bad. You're typically going to be shooting this gun in single action anyways after you fire that first round. So honestly, not too bad. Now I'm going to go ahead, cut the camera off. I'm going to disassemble this, and I'm going to go ahead and stone and polish the trigger components. All right, so I have the SAR B6 completely disassembled here. I'm just going to go ahead and show some of the components before the polishing. I will say I have actually started to polish this hammer already, because I started polishing all the external components to this thing, so just to make it look a little bit nicer. But I haven't touched the sear angles yet, the sear surfaces on the hammer yet. So that's like before there. See, we have our actual sear here. You can see kind of where some of the wear marks there, but I haven't stoned it yet. See, like on the top there, you can kind of see that mark. And then right there, you can kind of see it's a little worn maybe. You can kind of see it's shiny, but you can see it's not actually a nice perfect surface. The front house here, where the trigger rides, you can just tell, just feeling this thing, you can tell it's rough. So that's just a look at some of the components here. The top of that, it's pretty smooth, but you can see it's got some wear marks on it. But that's just the look before. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting everything stoned and polished, and I'll show you guys some after results here in a minute. All right, I'm back. I have everything stoned, polished, and go ahead and show you some of the components here. Here we have the SAR. You can see the top there. It's nice and polished, nice and smooth. Just a tiny bit, a little bit of the coating is off there, you can tell. And then here on the SAR surface there, you can tell it's just been smoothed out a little bit. I went really light with it. I didn't want to change any angles. Just a very nice light touch with it, but you can tell it is a lot smoother. And then again down here, you can tell, you can still kind of see some lines in that, but it is quite a bit smoother. Let's see the top of our little strike or fire pin block, nice and smooth. Our hammer strut, clean that up real nice and smooth. Our hammer. Now I went ahead and removed all the factory coating and kind of polished up the whole hammer here. Go ahead and just lightly, very lightly stone them. But our trigger, I also went ahead and I polished the trigger, but on the sides here, I mostly just took off the factory texture or the factory coating, and then I did stone the sides here, which they are very smooth. The trigger bar, cleaned up all the surfaces on here, smoothed out these edges here. Also underneath here, smooth that out, and where the trigger connects. I feel like I'm probably missing something. The front house, I did stone the inside there just to smooth that out where the trigger rides. I think that was everything. So go ahead and turn off the camera. I'm gonna get this thing reassembled and trigger pull measurements, and we'll go ahead and assess the trigger feel. I'll be back with you guys here in a minute. All right, so I'm back. I have the SAR all reassembled after doing all the polishing of all the trigger components. Also, I wanted to mention when you're doing these this polishing, you don't want to go for a mirror finish. You're just trying to smooth the surface out. And just get a little bit of a shine to it. You don't want it to be in mirror finished. With that said, I did go ahead and get some trigger pull measurements with the polished trigger components. For the double action, we actually did see some pretty good improvement here. With the stock pull was around 9 pounds, and now we're looking around 8.2 pounds with the polish in the double action. And for the single action, we also saw a nice improvement. We averaged around 2.7 pounds versus the 3 pounds before. So we did actually see some nice noticeable improvement. As far as the trigger feel, it does feel, relatively smooth, maybe even smoother than it did before. It's still a little bit heavy even at 8.2. It just kind of has a heavy feel to it in the double action mode, but single action feels great. I'm going to go ahead now and disassemble it again. I'm going to install some new springs. These are low power springs, and I'm gonna get some trigger pull measurements with these in there, and I'll come back and share the results with you guys. All right, I'm back. I have all the new springs installed in the B6 here. We'll go ahead and show clear. And you can see I have no magazine in our magazine well, and no live ammunition in our chamber. This firearm is clear and safe. I did do our trigger pull measurements, and I'm gonna get to that here in a second. I'm just gonna assess the trigger feel with the new springs installed. And I will say in double action, it does feel really nice and smooth. It took a lot of that heaviness away, and man, it really just feels really good. And then single action, super nice, very light break, super crisp trigger. I have a feeling this is actually gonna be a lot of fun to shoot. So let's get into what those trigger pull measurements were after installing the new springs. For double action, we actually dropped it down another whole pound, and from 8.2 from the polished down to 7.2 with the springs. The single action dropped another pound as well. We went from 2.7 with the polish down to 1.7 on average with the spring kit. So this thing's feeling really nice. We can go ahead and move on to, let's see here, the next portion. Explain how you would accomplish these tasks without altering the geometry of the surface to an unsafe level. When you're working with the hammer and the sear, in order to not alter the geometry, you really just want to be super careful, get in really close, and make sure you're holding your stone on that angle perfectly with it, and just very gently go against it. Another method you could use is layout die. You can then you can actually see where you're stoning to make sure you're not doing anything uneven. Next, we'll go ahead and do a drop safety test. So yet again, we still have our clear gun here. Nothing in the magazine well, nothing in our chamber. So right now we have the hammer cocked to the rear. We can go ahead and give it a little push, not too crazy, but doesn't drop. Put the safety on, we'll pull the trigger, nothing happens. We can go ahead and we'll cock the hammer back again. We'll hold onto the hammer, pull the trigger, then I'll release the trigger here, and we see the hammer has caught that second notch in the sear. So we know that's functioning. Next thing we can check for would be some over travel. As we release the slide, you can see that the hammer goes down and then drops back up and catches that sear. As far as our drop safety test goes, it passes, so we should be good to go. And then for part 3, would you feel confident performing this work if tasked to do so, or would I need more time to feel prepared in doing this type of work? And honestly, I found this pretty straightforward, just as like the trigger job on the revolver or even the striker fired platform. Sure, this one is a little bit more complicated, has a little bit more moving parts, but overall, pretty simple, and I would feel pretty confident in performing this anytime if I was tasked. So with that said, that's all I have for you today, and thanks for watching.